Wow!
Hello, I am Liz Sinclair of Maine's Center for the Book. We're an affiliate of the Library of Congress and we're part of the Maine Humanities Council. The Centers for the Book are located across the country and territories. We help carry out the mission of the Library of Congress's National Center for the Book, which is to promote books, reading, libraries, and literacy nationwide, with a special emphasis on promoting the unique literary heritage of each state and territory. Every year, each center selects 2 books with local connections to represent it at the National Book Festival, one for young readers and one for adults. You are about to listen to a series of short conversations that Northeastern centers have had with selected authors of books for adults. We hope you enjoy these conversations and will consider listening to the authors and Great Reads videos from other regions. Because together, they are a testament to the richness and the diversity of this nation's literary creativity. Enjoy.
Hello, I'm Lisa Comstock with the Connecticut Center for the Book. Today, I'm delighted to talk with Tochi Onyebuchi, author of Goliath, the book we've selected to represent our state this year for the National Book Festival's Great Reads from Great Places. And he's winner of the 2022 Connecticut Book Awards in the fiction category. Tochi's previous books include Riot Baby, a finalist for the Hugo, Nebula, Locus, and NAACP Image Awards, and winner of the New England Book Award for Fiction, the Ignite Award for Best Novella, and the World Fantasy Award. He has also written The Beasts Made of Night and the War Girl series. His short fiction has appeared in the Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy, the year's Best Science Fiction, and elsewhere. His nonfiction includes the book Skinfolk and has appeared in the New York Times, NPR, and the Harvard Journal of African American Public Policy. He has earned degrees from Yale University, New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, Columbia Law School, and the Paris Institute of Political Studies. He currently resides in Connecticut. Welcome, Tochi.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's delightful to have you. Can't wait to hear the answers to your questions. So, here's some questions for you for the Great Reads from Great Places series. The National Book Festival's theme for this year is Everyone Has a Story. What does this theme mean to you?
I mean, it's been pretty obvious that traditionally, particularly in American storytelling, it has been dominated, whether culturally, professionally, by a certain set of rather homogenous voices or a homogenous demographic, traditionally white and middle class, very often male. But I found throughout my life that some of the people with the most dynamic stories who have had the most to teach me about the variety of the human experience have been people outside of that demographic. My mother, for instance, was a child during the Nigerian Civil War, subsequently lived through military dictatorships, then immigrated to America and had 4 kids. And the older I get and the more I learn about her life, the more I realize that she will always be forever a more dynamic and interesting person than I could ever hope to be. And it's stories like hers, stories that I've heard from countless individuals over the course of my life, have reaffirmed my belief that uh, there is so much out there that we can learn about, uh, not just the breadth and depth of what it means to be human, but how even to go about being a good person. And so that is what that statement, everybody has a story, means to me.
Thank you. Indeed, that is true. Can you share a book that was significant to you growing up and tell us why?
My favorite book of all time, is The Count of Monte Cristo. And I first encountered this book in high school, and uh, it blew me away. It's got swashbuckling, it's got duels, secret identities, buried treasure. literally everything that I could have asked for in a book at that age. And it wasn't until my junior year of high school, during a study abroad trip to France, that I actually discovered Alexandre Dumas was Black. It was almost by accident. And more than any words of affirmation that I'd received from my English teachers or any creative writing professors, finding out that the man who authored my favorite book was the same color as me was the strongest validation in the world that I could have ever received, telling me that I could write whatever it is I wanted to write.
It's an amazing story. It's wonderful. Thank you for that. And lastly, what's your favorite thing about Connecticut?
My favorite thing about Connecticut is how just dynamic it is. It really, if you have questions about how we've arrived at our current age, whether it's politically, socially, economically, the answer to that question resides in Connecticut. For instance, in the downtown sort of area of the town I grew up in, coincidentally called Constitution Square, you will find a driver's ed shingle next to a Chinese restaurant, next to a gun store, next to a spa. That, I think, tells you everything you need to know about how politically variegated my hometown is. And that, I think, is true for much of the state at large. It is one of the most fascinating, frustrating, but ultimately beautiful places that I've ever lived in and have had the honor of growing up in.
Well, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it. And well, we'll be showing your book, and I don't have I have a copy right here. Goliath, our representative book for fiction. Thank you so much for your time today. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hello, my name is Felicia Martin. I'm the Deputy Director for the New Hampshire Center for the Book. I'm excited to talk with Cy Montgomery, author of The Soul of an Octopus and Inky's Amazing Escape, the two books we've selected this year to represent our state. Cy Montgomery is a naturalist, author, and scriptwriter who writes for children as well as adults. Cy's 34 books, and counting, have garnered many honors, including one of our selections this year, The Soul of an Octopus, that was a 2015 finalist for the National Book Award. Cy, thank you so much for joining us.
I am thrilled to be here.
Could you talk to us a little bit about the National Book Festival's theme this year, which is Everyone Has a Story? What does this theme mean to you?
Oh, what it means to me is everyone, which includes everyone, not just you and me and a bunch of humans, but everyone else on this glorious planet, including octopuses. And I was thrilled that you selected my book because it fits this theme so perfectly. Before I wrote this book, a lot of people wondered, what kind of story can you tell with a mollusk? What does an octopus have to teach us? Can we even communicate with an animal so different from ourselves? And in the book, I found that each individual octopus, like each individual person, does have a story, a compelling story full of drama and emotion and memory and distinctive personalities. So I love the theme of this year's festival, and I'm thrilled that my book found a place in it.
Great, thank you so much, Cy. Can you share with us what inspired you to write your books, The Soul of an Octopus and Inky's Amazing Escape? Why was it important for you to tell these stories?
Well, all of my work is about animals and often relationships between people and animals. But is it possible to have a relationship with someone as different from us as an octopus? Someone separated by 500 million years of evolution. Somebody who can taste with all of their skin, has 3 hearts, blue blood, possesses venom, can shoot ink, and can change color and shape and pour their baggy body through an opening the size of an orange, even if they were 100 pounds? Well, the answer, to my surprise and delight, was yes. And that answer had profound implications for one of the most important and difficult questions in philosophy, and that is the question of consciousness. Who has it? What is it? How does it work? And if someone like an octopus does possess consciousness, what are we to do with that? How are we to live our lives? What is our relationship with the rest of the natural world if not just humans, not just mammals, not just vertebrates, not just terrestrial earth living creatures, but marine invertebrates? What if they have consciousness? How should we live then? And these were the questions that I explored through my friendships, and they were truly friendships with these amazing octopus characters who I met.
Wow, that's great. That's just so philosophical, something that you would never really, most people would never really think about a creature such as an octopus having higher thought. And well, thank you so much, Sai. It's been really amazing talking to you and hearing more about the two books that we selected. And just I thank you for your time. And I hope everyone checks out the two books we've selected and your new books as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And it's been wonderful speaking with a kindred spirit and with all of those readers out there.
Hi, I'm Sharon Rollins. I'm a member of the New Jersey Center for the Book. It's an affiliate of the Library of Congress. And today I am talking to three-time poet laureate Robert Pinsky about his book, Jersey Breaks, Becoming an American Poet, published by W.W. Norton and Company. Mr. Pinsky is a William Fairfield Warren Distinguished Professor of College and Arts and Scientists, Professor of English and Creative Writing. And he will be discussing his life growing up in Long Branch, New Jersey, and his journey to becoming a nationally renowned poet through the book Jersey Breaks. He's an author of 10 poetry collections, including the Pulitzer Prize nominated The Figured Wheel, New and Collected Poems, 1966 to 1996. He's also edited anthologies, written more than a half a dozen books about poetry, and even translated Dante's Inferno, among many other works. So I am delighted to have you here to talk to us about your book, Jersey Breaks, Becoming an American Poet. My question is, this year's National Book Festival's theme is Everyone Has a Story. What does this theme mean to you?
It means to me that I grew up among storytellers in the kind of New Jersey ethnic neighborhood that I grew up in. The Black people, at that time, most of the Latinx people were Puerto Rican, the Irish people, certainly the Jewish people and the Italian people. One of the amusements and occupations and ways of making a point was telling a story. And for good or bad, my poetry is profoundly influenced and was formed by hearing people who made themselves, people who were not college graduates, but people who had made themselves very expert joke tellers, arguers, complainers, and liars.
Wow, sounds fascinating. Yes, as a Jersey native, I am familiar with Long Branch, and I know it's changed over the years, but I still think, yeah, there's so many people in communities that have stories to tell that really have influenced, us as people, and of course you as a poet.
My story is generational. My father and mother met at Long Branch High School.
Wow.
My aunts and uncles and cousins and brother and sister all went to Long Branch High School. And my father's father, Dave Pinsky, had a bar across the street from City Hall. And he came to Long Branch as an employee of the Newark illegal liquor business during the Prohibition. My grandpa was the guy with the gun on the boats, and he decided he liked the shore better than Newark.
It's fascinating. Yes, New Jersey has a lot of stories like that. It's a great state to live in, I think, and we're
I
very proud
agree.
of you, even though I know you don't live in New Jersey anymore. But we still, saying you are like a Jersey son. Can you share a little bit about what inspired you to write your book, Jersey Breaks, and why was it important for you to tell this story? Or your memoir, I should say.
I wanted to write a memoir that was also an autobiography. And those two words, those two literary words, are reflected by the breaks, just the way people talk in New Jersey, or basic way of talking, and becoming an American poet, which is the autobiography and has to do with ideas. And our country, you as an employee of the Library of Congress are aware that Library of Congress is the greatest house of memory in the world, larger, more ambitious than the Bibliothèque Nationale or the British Museum, and high culture for our greatest writers like Emily Dickinson, Mark Twain, Herman Melville. I think Willa Cather belongs in the list. They've been interested, as I have been, in the tensions and conflicts between our democracy and the idea of a high literary and intellectual culture. And anti-intellectualism has been an influence and an element in my life. And it turns out it's also a tremendous force in our social and political life.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Can I ask you if there was someone that influenced you as a writer when you were growing up, either to be a writer in general or to be, how you became a poet? We have a lot
I
of
had two great literary teachers.
Mhm.
I had Francis Ferguson and Paul Fussell at Rutgers. No university in the world could have given me a better. Ferguson is the greatest American literary critic. Unlike most of them, he read many languages. And when he describes in The Idea of the Theater how kittens playing have a histrionic sensibility, when they do mock fighting, mock hunting, mock stalking, they're having a formal appreciation, and they create this mock stalking or hunting that is more rhythmic and harmonious than actual real stalking or hunting. His ideas formed my ambitions. And Paul Fussell was an elegant snob who taught the 18th century, and his mixture of snobbery and his profound feelings of having been terribly wounded in the war, World War II, and having been taught by a working class sergeant when Fussell was a cavalry lieutenant. Those same ideas I've mentioned of democracy and high culture were raised in all of their complexity as a lifetime mission by teachers like Paul Fussell and Francis Ferguson.
Thank you so much. They sound like quite the influencers, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about your book, and I look
I
forward
have to give you an
sharing it.
assignment though, Sharon. I have to give you
Okay.
an assignment. You work for the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress, in my opinion, the most significant literary thing it ever did, certainly in the last 50 years, was the Favorite Poem Project. And we gave those videos to the library. And I hope when you work with especially teachers, you make sure people know about the Favorite Poem Project videos. The construction worker reading Whitman, the Cambodian immigrant reading Langston Hughes, and all like that.
Thank you so much. I certainly will, and I will share that with all of the folks that I work with. Thank you so much again for your time.
My pleasure, Sharon.
Hi, I'm Liz Sinclair of Maine Center for the Book. This year, we have selected Maine author Megan Gillis's novel, Lungfish, to represent Maine at this year's National Book Festival. Lungfish tells the story of a woman who is grappling through the lies she's been told and the lies that she's told herself to arrive at the truth of who she is and where she must go. It has been described as an exquisitely written, brilliant, and heartbreaking novel about addiction, about doubt, marriage, motherhood, and learning to see in the dark. It takes place on an uninhabited island off the coast of Maine. I am so fortunate to have Megan here with me. Megan Gillis attended the Bennington Writing Seminars and is a fellow of the Huon Oaks Artist Residency. She's worked as a journalist, a bookseller, a librarian, and a hospital worker. And Megan, we're so glad that you live in Portland, Maine. This is her first novel. Megan, I'm going to get right to the first question. The National Book Festival's theme this year is Everyone Has a Story. I'm wondering what that theme means to you.
Thank you, Liz. It's such an honor to be speaking with you on this topic and about this book. Yeah, so everyone has a story, and beyond that, I think everyone's story is interesting if you pay attention. And fiction allows us that extended and really salient look in a space that frees us from the need to judge, or any way that allows us to suspend our judgment for longer than I think sometimes we can with the real humans who walk among us and breathe on us and stand in line in front of us and, shape the policy that impacts us. The circumstances of Lungfish are very specific. And before the book finished itself out, I worried that this was maybe going to be its failing, that it would somehow fail to resonate widely because of its specificity. But in the end, I think it's this specificity that makes any particular person real, and so makes a situation real, and so gives it meaning beyond its own bounds. And what I found is in writing this book is that sort of the more you dig in, the more you also dig out, in a way, creating tunnels between story and the world.
Oh, Megan, thank you. I love the way you're thinking about that theme. Wondering if you could share with us what inspired you to write Lungfish, and why was it important for you to tell this story?
Yeah, so like the narrator of this novel, I had a lot to learn about a situation I had little control over, having to do with motherhood, sort of being coupled suddenly with another life to sustain, and a loved one's addiction. And I think I was stubborn about learning about it through recommended means. And I think I also noticed a richness to the difficulty that I was experiencing. And I really just began trying to encapsulate certain emotional states like disorientation, awe, misguided hope, fury, necessary hope, etc., sort of in these fictionalized scenarios. Someone recently asked me if I ever thought of keeping a journal instead of writing fiction as a way to sort of work my way through this time. And all I could say was no, it really never occurred to me to do so. And I think aside from not having a habit of being a journal keeper, it also just would have been too head on for me. So for me, fiction was this perfect way of exploring and preserving and ultimately controlling, to some extent, a set of experiences, and of sort of working something out. It was compulsive, I think, the writing. It was sort of compulsive behavior. And I do think that's what gives the book some of its urgency, because there were some things that I was sort of needing to figure out as urgently as the narrator of the novel does. Ultimately, it was a book about how to navigate through our blind spots. So now I know that you can just spend half a decade working on a novel about those blind spots. And hopefully as a reader, you can spend less time reading somebody else's novel about those blind spots.
Well, Megan, thank you so much. We are really excited that you are going to be traveling around a little bit and speaking across Maine about the book. And I think so many libraries across the state are reading this book right now. So thank you so much for working with us and for this wonderful first novel. We can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Carolina Zapal. I am the program coordinator for the Massachusetts Center for the Book. I am delighted to introduce Ben Shattuck, the author of 6 Walks in the Footsteps of Henry David Thoreau, the adult title we have chosen to represent Massachusetts this year in the Great Reads program.
Hi, my name is Ben Shattuck. I'm the author of 6 Walks in the Footsteps of Henry David Thoreau. I'm talking to you from South Dartmouth, Massachusetts, where it's a drizzly, cold June afternoon, a very New England summer day. And I'm thrilled to be here talking about this book and the National Book Festival. So the theme this year I hear for the National Book Festival is everyone has a story. And at least from my perspective, from somebody who wrote a whole book about encountering strangers and sometimes friends in the New England wilderness and towns, I can say that absolutely rings true. Everybody really does have a story. Everybody throughout their single day brings a host of experiences, histories, perspectives, observations, and can tell a story from that. One of the greatest lessons I learned in this book project was that it was often better to listen than to try to talk to strangers or talk to folks that I had encountered. Just by listening, by asking questions and waiting for a reply, whole worlds opened up to me that I never expected, from answers to why people were hiking through certain trails in Maine or Massachusetts, to why people had arrived at the beach in Cape Cod that day, to what they were going through in their life that felt really important to them. I was just astounded at the fact of what is said right here, that everyone really does have a story, and that it's important to just open up my ears and listen. And often my own story can be added to that. What inspired me to write 6 Walks in the Footsteps of Henry David Thoreau? Well, the secret is I never really loved Henry David Thoreau's writing. In high school and college, when I was assigned his work, I always thought it was too academic, too difficult, hard to get through. And I didn't understand why my teachers said he was the best nature writer we had. And then one winter, a couple years ago, I was at my parents' house, and on their bookshelf, I found the selected journal entries of Henry David Thoreau. I took it off the shelf, opened it up, and at random read a passage about ice bubbles trapped in a pond outside Concord. I thought it was so beautiful, so I turned the page and read another entry about frost in a windowsill, and then went ahead a few months in the journal entries and read about a monarch butterfly landing on milkweed. Long story short, it was a collection of the most beautiful nature writing I had ever encountered. And so when I went out to go walking that spring and summer, I decided to start following some of his walks. The first one was Cape Cod. This wasn't really even intended to be a book. I took a notebook like Thoreau had and made some quick notes that turned into sentences, that turned into paragraphs, that turned into pages and chapters. And before I knew it, I had a book on my hands, which was really a celebration of this person, Henry David Thoreau, who shot through so briefly in our world. He died at 44. He was pretty young. And the way he observed nature and the way he considered it and the way he framed it in his writing, which is so astounding, so rare, yet so timeless, that I wanted to celebrate that and go on my own walks and try to bring my own interpretation to it. It was real joy and satisfaction to follow the footsteps of somebody from over a century ago. And I guess part of that would also be I wanted to share that with the world. It was for myself, and as maybe all books start, and then all of a sudden I felt like I wanted tell everybody about this wonderful person's writing, and how that person's writing, that person's perspective can still affect a person's everyday life here in 2023. My favorite thing about Massachusetts, maybe this is surprising except for anybody from Massachusetts, would be the beaches, the coastline. I grew up in the town where my great-grandmother lived, and I still live here, so we haven't moved very far, and it's right on the coast of Massachusetts here. The beaches of Massachusetts are so beautiful and tranquil in the summer with the warm Gulf Stream, and in the winter, you know, the snow comes on the beaches. In the fall, the nor'easters and the huge waves go through the beaches, and the landscape of the coast in Massachusetts is just so varied and so beautiful. The huge migrations of shorebirds coming through, the salt marshes, the way the interplay of the sea and land. I really think it's a very, very special place, and it all has that sort of private, quiet, small-scale beauty that I think Thoreau really loved as well. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy the book if you get a chance to read it, and if not, I highly recommend picking up the journal entries of Henry David Thoreau. Thanks so much.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Carla Schmidt. I'm the director of the Pennsylvania Center for the Book. I have the pleasure of visiting with Marcia Ann Tate about her co-authored book, Bellefonte, Images of America, which has been chosen by the Pennsylvania Center for the Book as the adult title to represent Pennsylvania at the National Book Festival. Welcome, Marcia.
Thank you very much for having me.
So glad that you're able to visit with us about this book. How did you and Earl Hauser come to write this title? What made Bellefonte special to you?
I was a librarian for many years, and I had written books on library-related topics about the internet, and I had done some history, writing history-related topics about North American history over the years since the 1990s. And then my Earl worked at the Penn State University libraries, so we thought, well, we both were born in Bellefonte. We were very close all through our lives. And so we decided, hey, why not? Let's try to write a book on Bellefonte. I had a ton of photographs because my grandparents, my great-grandparents, had about 4 generations worth of photographs that I had at the house. And he had photographs too that had over the years. So we decided, well, let's see whether we could do something that actually focuses on those photographs. And so we got together. We had written another book about it just a few months beforehand that we had finished up on television history. We also like doing classic television shows. So we had finished that one up, and we thought, okay, so we'll try Bellefonte. And we were surprised that there wasn't already a book that was done on Bellefonte with the photographs and so forth. Through the publisher was Arcadia Publishing, and so Arcadia has a series that focuses on histories of towns and areas, and with the photographs. So we thought, well, they hadn't done that yet, so let's give it a try. We did it, and we had fun. We had a lot of fun doing it. And I should add that Earl unfortunately passed away here in early March, and so he's greatly missed, because he enjoyed, also after we finished the book, he enjoyed going out and talking to people about Bellefonte for things. But no, we really had a great time, and we learned a lot in the process.
Oh, I bet you did. You know, Earl was one of my colleagues at Penn State, and I really miss him so much.
Oh yeah, yes,
he was
it's
a wonderful, well-respected man at the Penn State University Library.
Great co-author too.
Yeah, I'm sure, wonderful. So when the two of you were working on this, how did you divide up the work between the images and the text? What was your process?
Both of us, as I said, had photographs. So Earl was looking through his collection. I was looking through my collection. I did the digitization of the photos and most of the technical things, where Earl was sort of the idea person. He loved decorating. One of the things we did was sort of the fair here in Center County is Grange Fair, and they had a tent decorating contest. And every year he would do that. So he had a very good visual eye for things. So it was really for thinking about the places in Bellefonte that really had that visual impact to them. So he was really very helpful in choosing the photographs and going through and choosing what topics, narrowing it down to what actual places in Bellefonte that we would focus on. So he was more of the design and the idea person, and I was the technical and writing up descriptions and so forth. And he also had input in that as well. So it turned out that it was a great way of dividing up the work for the book, and that's how we set it up.
Oh, it sounds like it was a wonderful collaboration.
It was. We had a great. It was just a marvelous time writing it.
So thank you so much for sharing your title with us, Bellefonte, Images of America, that highlights the history of Bellefonte, Pennsylvania, a location that had 5 governors from Pennsylvania, which is incredible. That's incredible. I love all the history facts that I learned from reading and enjoying this book. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. My name's Elizabeth Rush, and my book, The Quickening, Creation and Community at the Ends of the Earth, was selected to represent Rhode Island this year. The Quickening really tells 2 stories at the same time. The first story is about a 54-day scientific mission, which I was selected to be a part of in 2019. This mission traveled on board a U.S. ice-breaking vessel to the very southern tip of the planet, to a glacier in Antarctica called Thwaites. You may be familiar with Thwaites because it's been given this sort of catchy, horrible nickname of the Doomsday Glacier. It has that nickname because were Thwaites to wholly disintegrate, it could raise global sea levels 2 feet. And Thwaites also acts as a cork to much of the West Antarctic ice sheet. So if we lose that cork, there's fear that the entirety of the West Antarctic ice sheet could fall apart, which would raise global sea levels 10 feet or more. So our mission went to Thwaites, and in particular, we went to the place where Thwaites discharges ice into the sea. And as the first people on the planet to ever make it there, our job was to gather as much observational data as humanly possible about this glacier and the processes that are driving its disintegration. I should say that, many of our predictions about how Thwaites will behave are really predictions. And so this observational data was important in terms of, and is important in terms of making those predictions more accurate. So one story is about that story, that scientific mission, and my participation in it. The other story is a much more personal story. When I got on that boat, with a desire to bring a child into this world. And I carry that desire throughout the mission and after the mission. And the secondary narrative is really about, what does it mean to have a child now? What are the ethics around that? And what are the emotional and practical ways of navigating that desire as the planet is, increasingly imperiled? In terms of this year's National Book Festival theme, everyone has a story to tell. That theme means a ton to me. As I did early research to write this book, I started to feel like so many of the stories that we tell about Antarctica all sound really similar. They tend to involve like a white man from the global north sallying forth and conquering the last continent. And so I knew that I wanted my book to really challenge that narrative. And I, of course, went about that by talking about motherhood in connection with Antarctica. But I also went about it in a different, more kind of practical and fundamental way. My main daily activity on the boat was interviewing my shipmates. There were 57 of us on board this boat, 50% scientists, 50% crew. And most of the stories we hear today about Antarctica tend to tell the scientist perspective. And so I wanted my book to really be more democratic in terms of who it included. And so, you know, I interviewed the cooks and the engineers and the captain and the mates and the able-bodied seamen and all of these people whose task it is to make that science possible. And so I think of the book, I think of my book as having 34 narrators. I'm one of them, and my first person narration is regularly interrupted by the voices of my shipmates. And in many ways, you know, challenging dominant Antarctic narratives is one of the things that inspired me to write The Quickening. I also think at a more meta level, I wanted to challenge traditional climate change narratives. I don't think it's useful to call Thwaites the doomsday glacier because it just fills people with fear. And so at a deep level, this book is also about collective labor and what we can achieve when we work together. But it doesn't get sentimental about that, in that, you know, everyone on the boat comes together to do this seemingly impossible task of gathering all this information from a really extreme environment. But then the boat returns to land and our group falls apart, just like the glacier continues to disintegrate. So, you know, I think showing an example of collective labor that doesn't get sentimental about collective labor in the face of climate change also felt really important to me as I wrote this book. In terms of favorite things about Rhode Island, I live in Providence, and every morning I start my day with a tootle around the block with my 3-year-old, him on his little green bicycle and me behind him or in front of him if we're going down a big hill. And right now, my favorite thing about Rhode Island is everyone's garden game in the city. Providence gardens tend to be wild and rambunctious and overgrown and fecund. So today, you know, the Stewartias were in bloom, the butterfly bushes. 2 of my neighbors have signs that say, "Eat all the raspberries you want. We can't possibly eat them all." So Providence garden game is probably my favorite thing. It is, you know, the high holy days of summer. So it's a great state, and I'm deeply honored to represent it as part of the National Book Festival this year. Thank you so much.
Swimming. I love swimming in rivers, lakes, Goshen Dam. It's just one of the huge benefits and pleasures of living in the country. The freezing cold water coming off the mountain, so it's super fresh, you know that. It doesn't have any cow runoff in it. And it's kind of like copper colored and very clear, but brown at the same time. And then the giant boulders that are really warm from the sun, and that contrast. That's my favorite thing about Vermont, hands down. I think one of the most influential books for me growing up was The Secret Garden. It was so magical and mysterious and emotional, as a book. There's a young girl at the center of it as the main character. She's difficult emotionally, and has to overcome a lot of hardships on her own, is placed into this world in the moors, in this castle-like manor. And there's definitely a mystery going on in the house itself, but the garden in that story was, I think, what intrigued me the most, that there was a walled-in garden, and that, something really traumatic had happened there, and nobody wanted to look at it. And here she is, sort of learning about having relationships with people, learning about how to be loved and find love, and making this incredible garden come back to life, and making everybody look at the walled off trauma. So now as an adult, I can look back and see the power of that, of why that was such a beautiful book for me then, because I related so deeply to her. Well, we all have very unique experiences in the world. I think about this a lot when I think about why we write poetry and what it means in a poem, because narrative is very important in a poem, and yet it's not the most important thing. But what is important in writing poetry and honoring what poetry does is that your unique experience with the world really matters. I love the idea of finding the ways that our own story touches other people's stories, knowing that, right, because we could sort of say that like everyone has a story. You could take that and think, I have a story, my story is special. But then if you think about it, like I have a story and other people have a story, how do our stories overlap? How are they unique? How can I help somebody access their own story or appreciate or be inspired by the fact that I can, in a very certain way, channel my own story? Well, I was originally going to call it Human Nature. And because I was interested suddenly in human nature, I think because I was struggling so much emotionally and mentally, and I kept doing things I didn't want to do, and I felt like I didn't understand human nature. And the other theme in the book is sort of motherhood, because I was early years of that. You know, your first foray into parenthood, of course, makes you face a lot about yourself and in your own past. So I went there, and the title, What is Otherwise Infinite, I was interested in this sort of limitations that we put on our lives about who we are and what our capabilities are. If it were otherwise, we would be infinite. You know, I continue this exploration into my next books, for sure. This exploration never ends.